which means the benefit which accrues to these slum dwellers by way of basic minimum amenities flows only to these notified slum areas, which through various acts these state governments are obliged to do this. Rest of these enumeration blocks in which slums have been found have not even been notified. Many of them have not even been recognized by the state government. But the census figures, the census operations has identified these enumeration blocks which are in slum areas. So in order to give amenities to these slum dwellers, the state governments need to notify these areas, then they will get the benefit of various statutory provisions provided in different acts by way of which these slum dwellers would be given basic amenities, basic services in these areas. So this is very important, and we would like to urge the state governments to please notify all these areas which have been identified and recognized by the census operations, and by way of which these areas qualify to be slum areas, so that these people can get at least the basic minimum services. Similarly, one very interesting thing has come from these census figures is that, and it is surprising, in 2001, now again total towns, they categorize it into different categories. One category is statutory towns. Statutory towns means all such towns which have urban local bodies. Then it comes census towns, then comes urban agglomeration, then is outgrowths. Census towns and outgrowths are such areas which do not have urban local bodies, but they fulfill as a town in three ways. One, they have 75% of their male members who are into non-agriculture occupation. Second is, they have minimum 5,000 population. The third is, the population density is at least 400 persons per square kilometers. So any such area which qualifies in these three aspects can be called a town. In 2001 census, around 2,324 such areas were found as census towns and outgrowths. So in 2001, which is now 12 years back, to such 2,324 such cities which were in census as cities, such urban outgrowths which as per census survey were cities, should have had by this time in 2011 census the municipalities. Unfortunately, out of 2,324 such cities, only 242 have been converted into municipalities. So what the situation now is that out of 7,939 towns, statutory towns, census towns, urban agglomeration, outgrowths, out of 7,939, only 4,041 are statutory towns which have municipalities, which have urban local bodies. So you can imagine a situation in which all these towns are. They are towns in terms of all aspects of a town, but they do not have a urban local body, rather they have a Gram Panchayat. So these state governments, instead of converting it into urban local bodies, are just hanging on to make it the Gram Panchayat, perhaps because the devolution of funds into Gram Panchayat is more than the devolution of funds into the urban areas or towns. But again, Gram Panchayats can't do justice to various needs in the urban areas. In the urban areas, when you talk about the needs of people in urban areas, it is much different from the needs of people in the villages. For urban areas, when planning, we go in for planning, when we go in for development control norms. Urban areas, when it starts growing, it has different needs and different kind of entitlement for the people, different kind of ways to find solutions for which the people find, which can be dealt only by the urban local bodies, which can be dealt only by the municipalities, for which specialized trained people through capacity building it is required. And that is why I would through you like to urge our states to please make these towns, which in every possible manner, every practical manner, are towns in which we have population more than 75% male member, into non-agriculture occupation, should be converted into towns so that urban local bodies exist there and they take better care of people over there. From our side, the two strategies what we have now come up with is, the first is that all three categories of the slums, even if they are not recognized, even if they are not notified by the states, but still they are identified by the census operation, by the census RGI, we will be giving money through our Rajiv Awas Yojana for the slum rehabilitation and upgradation of slums in these enumeration blocks. The second thing is, we are going to set up a slum development index, for which a 3-member committee is being set up by the ministry, and within 3 months the committee will give us report, on the basis of which we are going to start a process of evaluating the cities and states' performance on slums improvement. This slum development index will, in a real-time basis, be able to monitor or check the kind of improvement which these states and cities are making in terms of improvement in their slum areas within their respective cities and states. Two important bills I would like to touch upon in the end. We've got the report from the Standing Committee on Street Vendors' Right to Livelihood and Regulation Bill. We intend to fix a percentage of population of these cities in these urban areas, which should be the number of vending spaces for these informal vending in these areas. And we would like this to be 2.5% of the urban population in any city, to be the exact number which should be the number of vending spaces in the city. We also, through this bill, would like to empower the town vending committee, 40% of which would be the vendors themselves electing people and sending to the town vending committees, 10% of which would be representatives from the NGOs, from the unions who look after the interests of these vendors, and rest can be the town planners, the engineers, or the representatives from the urban local bodies. So these town vending committees we also would like to empower, so that in a planned fashion, 2.5% of the population in informal sector can be put in different places within the city. It is in a way universalization of street vendors. In a way, it is to take care of these informal sector street vendors who are on day-to-day basis, they work something and they earn something. So it is a big intervention from the government side to protect the livelihood of these poor street vendors, and we are hopeful that this bill will be enacted in this session alone. The other thing which we are going to come up with is the Real Estate Regulatory Authority Bill. We intend to introduce this Real Estate Regulatory Authority Bill in the coming session. Through this Real Estate Regulatory Authority Bill, we would like to protect the interest of buyers from the builders. We would like any proposed developer to first have all statutory clearances before starting a project. Any proposed developer who has all clearances should first register itself with a regulatory authority in a particular state, should put all its papers, all its clearances, permissions on the website provided by that regulatory authority before asking for money from the buyers and before launching that project. Now what we are seeing is that many proposed buyers, they start a project without even getting all statutory clearances. And the delay is at the cost of buyer. The buyer keeps on giving money, but the project starts only when all statutory clearances comes to the developer, and on that basis the project is delayed and the buyer ultimately suffers. The second thing which we are making it mandatory through that bill is, we are defining the carpet area of any apartment, any house. We are defining the carpet area, by way of which there will be no super duper carpet area as announced by the builder, and that defined as per the definition of carpet area of that apartment. On the website, he would have to put in the exact details of the exact size or the area which a prospective buyer is going to get. The third thing is, in this bill, we would like the buyer, like the developer, to open a separate account for every project. And when the money comes in that project, he has to mandatorily save the amount of money which is required to construct the entire project, construct the entire construction on that project. He can't divert the money from that project onto other project and leave the first project in limbo. Now what is happening, these private developers, they launch a project, take money from the people, and instead of completing the project in time, they buy land for the other project, leave that project in limbo, and then start the second and then move on to the other. And in the meantime, the prices rise. Any prospective buyer who makes noise is given back the money, and the builder eventually benefits out of it. So we are making it mandatory that the builder has to have separate account for every project, in which he has to keep the amount of money which is required for construction of the project, so that that project completes in time. In the beginning itself, at the time of registration, the developer has to tell the regulatory authority, which would be placed on the website, the total time for the completion of this project. So the developer in the end cannot also further delay the project, and there is no cause for any delay. When all the statutory permissions are there, when the money given by the buyers is there in the account, which he can't divert to the other, the construction has to complete it in time. There is no reason why the construction is delayed. So the construction, the outer limit for the construction of the entire project, also that the developer will have to tell the regulator as to when it is going to be completed. So any agreement also which is signed between the developer and the buyer, that agreement also has to be vetted by the regulator, so that it protects the interest of the buyer also. The final prints in any agreement, which normally the buyer doesn't look at, or which the buyer doesn't have the capacity to interpret, also will be taken care of by the regulator, who will ensure that it is a balanced agreement between the buyer and between the buyer and the developer. So with all these things, I think that this will take care of our prospective buyers, particularly the salaried class people who put in all their money, entire earnings of their life they put in for a particular house or an apartment. They will at least not be duped by the developer once this bill is enacted. We would like to introduce this bill in the Parliament in the coming session. This is our target, and we are going to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. The floor is now open for questions, and I will first invite questions from our outstation delegates. Yes, please.
Mr. Bakin, I am from Calcutta. So, for different poverty alleviation program in urban areas, abolishment of land ceiling is a precondition.